Lewis, if I were to say Shedeur Sanders is going to be the Browns' starting quarterback when this season begins, is that ridiculous?
No, Greeny, you know, it's not ridiculous as long as they are able to. And I heard Dan Graziano talking about this morning earlier on ESPN radio. Yeah, I listen to it when I'm in my car in the morning. It's all as long as they can get him enough reps. And it sounds like Kevin Stefanski is aware of the fact that in order to create a real quarterback competition, he has to kind of change some things in terms of the way he divvies out reps during the preseason and during the offseason. If he can compete with Dillon Gabriel, if he can compete with Joe Flacco, he can compete with Kenny Pickett, there's a very good chance that if this is an organic competition with a level playing field, he could be your starter week 1, no question about it.
Look, sometimes we attach this number now. He was a 5th-round draft pick, and I understand that there was a reason for that. I'm not pretending it doesn't matter at all. But what I'm saying is if he had been drafted in the 2nd round or the 1st, which is what we were expecting, then there'd be almost no debate about it, right? We'd be with exactly the same body of work in college and the same skill set. We would absolutely be forecasting him to be the starter, especially, Dan, when you consider the other options they have available.
Right, but he is a 5th-round pick, and there was another quarterback they drafted 2 rounds earlier this year, in addition to Joe Flacco, who helped them get to the playoffs 2 years ago, and Kenny Pickett, who he's in the mix as well. So they have 4 guys. They need to get them all practice reps. Kevin Stefanski, what Lewis was alluding to, he put 7-on-7 drills into the rookie minicamp. Usually rookie minicamp is just, classroom stuff, very basic stuff, nothing really, and in terms of team competition. But he wanted Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel to be able to get some reps at a time of year when they weren't competing with veterans for those reps. So he's very conscious, Stefanski is, of trying to make this as good, as close a competition as possible among all 4 of them.
I'm going down with the ship with my friend Mel Kiper on this one. He is the most underdrafted player that I can ever remember. I genuinely believe if he has a chance, a real chance, he's going to wind up making a run at the starting job there sooner rather than later. All right, the next one. Lewis, I was looking over on ESPNBet.com. The Bears' win total for this year is 8.5 wins. This is at ESPN Bet. They only won 5 games last year. So if someone said they're going to be the most improved team in the league this year, is that ridiculous?
That's not ridiculous at all. Look, I think last year when we talked about the Bears and specifically offensively and the lack of development that we saw from Caleb Williams, we pointed squarely to Shane Waldron, the former offensive coordinator, and the fact that there just wasn't a good plan on top of the fact that there just wasn't enough surrounding him. Well, all of that has changed this year with Ben Johnson coming in, with the revamping of the interior 3 of the offensive line, and then the work that they did in the draft, Greeny, and we were there on the desk and we saw it. We saw them draft Colston Loveland. We saw them draft Luther Burden, wide receiver, tight end, respectively, to go along with a guy like DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze. This team is loaded offensively. Now it's about putting together a good plan and Caleb living up to his potential that he showed in college, that he showed at Oklahoma, that he showed at USC. And if all that comes together, this could be one of the more explosive offenses in the NFC and in the league overall. Now, I know that's a big leap. People say, hey, look, let's just crawl before we walk. Let's walk before we run. But look, this league, people can go worst to first in a hurry. I'm not saying they're going to go worst to the first in their division, but they will be much improved. One of the most improved teams in the NFL.
Yeah, not at all ridiculous. I mean, look at last year's Washington Commanders, how quickly things can turn around if you put the right people in the right positions. A lot of unknowns with that coaching staff in Chicago, but, they're well regarded, and obviously I think the defense will be good under Dennis Allen. So I think the Bears have a chance, but the division, as you mentioned, is rough. That is rough, and that is going to probably cost them on their win total because they're going to have to fight against those other 3 teams that all made the playoffs last year. Most improved team, I'd be looking more at like a San Francisco or a Dallas, teams we've seen do it and then had their seasons last year done in by injuries.
Oh, you mentioned Dallas, did you? Well, isn't that a good segue? So yesterday, A.J. Brown was talking about, of all things, the Eagles' biggest rival, and listen to what he said.
Now, we're going to have to worry about him for sure. Hey, we're going to have to worry about him. No, I like the trade. I do like the trade. I like the competition, and I like George Pickens. I like CeeDee Lamb and that collab, and it's gonna be exciting to watch, bro, because all that does is bring the best out of us. So if we know how they coming, we know we gotta step it up,
Cowboys trading for George Pickens could wind up being one of the most undercovered stories of this entire offseason if he, and it's a huge if, plays up to his enormous potential. Their win total is only 7.5 wins at ESPN Bet. So, Lewis, here's a question I never would have thought I would ask on a show I host, but are we sleeping on the Cowboys? Am I not paying enough attention to the Cowboys?
I don't think so, Greeny. Look, I'm gonna look at this from two sides, okay? There's a reason why, you know, when we're talking about football and we're talking about team building, that it's just not about physical skills and what things look like on paper. And the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers pulled the plug on George Pickens and said, hey, look, instead of like looking at this 3, 4, 5 years down the road and investing the kind of money we, you know, need to invest in a guy like you in order to retain you, meaning an upper echelon wide receiver, you know, we just don't think that the risk and reward is in our favor. So we're going to send you down the road to Dallas. So look, we understand the kind of things that George brings as a high riser, above the rim type of player outside the numbers as a true X wide receiver, a guy who can win one-on-one, who's a quarterback's best friend. But it's more than just that. It's about fitting into that culture, being a positive influencer on that locker room for 17 weeks. Not just for a mini camp, not just for a play here and there, but a guy who's going to show up on time, that who's going to be a force multiplier, who's going to be dependable, who's going to be a good team. Like, all those things are what adds up to you, helping you make a team a contender, not just highlight reel catches.
You made an interesting point, that they won 7 games last year without their quarterback.
Quarterback got hurt halfway through the season. I'm pretty sure that they've been over 7.5 in every one of Dak Prescott's fully healthy seasons. Then they believe that George Pickens, coming into their leadership structure in terms of their locker room, in terms of the quarterback, in terms of CeeDee Lamb, right, they'll get the best out of him. 1 year on his contract, so lots of motivation. Best quarterback he's ever played with. That there's no offseason addition to any team that's as significant as the Cowboys getting back Dak Prescott.
The next game is called What Are the Chances? Hey, Dan Graziano, once and for all, what are the chances that the Steelers have Aaron Rodgers as their starter week 1?
We give it 52%, which is pretty good considering he's not even on the team at the moment. They have a mandatory minicamp coming up in the second week of June. It's a date worth watching. If he's not there by the end of that minicamp, then hard to see him showing up late July for training camp and jumping right in.
Lewis, I guess that was going to be my question. Is there, we've already blown past anything I would have thought, but is there any hard, fast deadline in your mind by which they have to know?
Yeah, I would say minicamp has to be, you know, one of those concrete, you know, hard line deadlines because of the fact that he's going into an offense that he's not familiar with, a whole new team. We understand, we know what this looks like and the kind of challenges it presents when your quarterback has not really established himself with the primary offensive players in terms of being there every day, understanding the nuance of the offense, so they understand how he likes to play, how they like to play, so you can hit the ground running in week 1. Look, the Steelers aren't interested, man. They really aren't interested in just trying to be a 500 type of team and just be a team that continues to stay in purgatory. He's the guy that we've been saying all offseason long, Greeny, that the Pittsburgh needs to level up at the quarterback position, and I believe Aaron, in a normal situation with Pittsburgh, meaning a full offseason to get familiar with Arthur Smith and familiar with his teammates, can actually provide that. The longer this goes, the more likely it is that it's going to be a disappointing season. And I know they're seeing the same things. There's no way they can't be. Every single day that he's not there hurts their chances of actually leveling up at that spot.
A confounding situation, to say the least. Let's stay in the division, Lewis, and I'll come right back to you. Joe Burrow talking to the press yesterday, expressing some frustration about a few different things. So what are the chances that Burrow and the Bengals miss the playoffs again this season?
Yeah, I went big on this one. I said it's like 60% that they're going to miss the playoffs because of and not because of the fact that, not because of what they have offensively, which is a ridiculous amount of firepower. It's because on the defensive side of the ball, with a new defensive coordinator, Al Golden, who comes over from Notre Dame, I just wonder if they have the horses, in particular up front, because of the fact that guy on your screen right there, we don't know what his situation is right now. Trey Hendrickson is the pass rush for the Cincinnati Bengals. I know they drafted Shamar Stewart in the first round. Shamar needs to really still, at this point in time, develop, you know, the ability to be a consistent sacker of the quarterback, not just a pressure guy on the quarterback, not just a fantastic physical talent, but a guy who can actually put quarterbacks on the ground and close out games. Trey Hendrickson can do that. And if they don't defensively, if they're not able to keep points off the board, not able to be a top 15, top 10 type of defensive team in terms of scoring allowed, then this team isn't going anywhere. I don't care what Joe Burrow has to do. We saw that last year. We saw Joe Burrow have one of the best seasons of his career, and it's still not good enough.
And not even close. And so Trey Hendrickson has expressed enormous frustration with his situation. What do we know?
They're still working on it. They still believe they can get it done. But right now, the two sides don't see eye to eye on his value at age 30, going to turn 31 this year. And they're stuck. And to Lewis's point about Shedeur Sanders, he's not practicing either. He hasn't liked the way what's going on with his contract negotiation as a rookie contract. Didn't sign the waiver that everybody else signs when they don't have their rookie contract done to go to minicamp. So they have a couple things to figure out on defense.
And that is coming off of one of the worst defensive seasons that we've ever seen. Last one, Graziano. Josh Allen came up just short of a Super Bowl appearance again last season. What are the chances he finally wins one this year?
I ran the numbers on this, Greeny. I came up with 11.6%, which I think is a pretty high number for this time of year. I'd be curious to know whoever the favorite is and what their number is right now. But Bills are set up. They're excellent. They proved last year that they're going to maintain a good quality roster that can compete at the very highest level. They went to the AFC Championship game and lost in Kansas City. One of these years, I think Josh Allen and the Bills break through.
Well, it better be this year, and we're about to explain to you why they will play this season. Let's talk about Josh Allen and the playoffs. In his postseason career, Allen has thrown 25 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. That's the best ratio in NFL history. He has 3 playoff losses with 3 touchdowns and no turnovers, all against Kansas City. No other quarterback has more than 1 of those losses in history. And we bring this up because today, happy birthday, Josh, is Allen's 29th birthday. Here's the problem. Of all the quarterbacks to win the Super Bowl, over 70% of them did it before they turned 30. So history tells us that if Allen is going to get it done, this is the time he needs to get it done. I will repeat, the Bills are a favorite in every single game on their schedule this season. Lewis, there they are. They're the only team favored in every game on ESPN Bet. You put it all together and you say to yourself, if not now, then when for Josh Allen? What do you think, Lewis Riddick?
Yeah, but, look, again, they're favored in all 17 regular season games, but, kind of very similar to the discourse surrounding the Baltimore Ravens. Nobody cares about what you do in the regular season in Buffalo. Nobody cares. I mean, yeah, of course they're going to have a great regular season. They're one of the most well-coached teams in the NFL, have tremendous continuity, front office, coaching staff, head coach, coordinators, quarterbacks, primary players on offense and defense. But it doesn't matter, man. It's like when you get to the playoffs, now what are you going to do? And see, that's when you're talking about how explosive the AFC is from an offensive perspective, the secondary comes into question for me, which is still a question mark for me. If we're really just nitpicking and trying to break down the Buffalo Bills, forget the offense. Josh is going to do what he's going to do. And offensively, they're going to score a ton of points. And they're going to be there in the end. It's defensively in the secondary against the high-powered teams that we know can win the game with one swing of the arm with all these fantastic quarterbacks. In the AFC, do they have the horses in the back end? Up front, they do. Up front, their defensive line, I'm telling you, is going to be as good as any in the NFL this year, and they added to it. If Joey Bosa can stay healthy, and I know people say, well, if Joey Bosa can stay healthy. Look, Joey Bosa can still play 25, 30 snaps and be very good. Landon Jackson, who they drafted from Arkansas, to go with Greg Rousseau. They've got some dogs up front now. Defensively, they're going to be able to rush the passer. It's the secondary, Greeny. It's the secondary that's the issue, and I think that could be the Achilles heel ultimately in the very end.
They have shown, however, that Sean McDermott and his staff can coach him up on defense, maybe get more out of that secondary scheme-wise than you think. And they've also shown the front office that they'll go out and get help if that's what they need at the trade deadline. Like of all the things, I'm not worried about the Buffalo Bills until January, at which point, yes, that they need to break through one of these years. I think they will break through one of these years. It's an incredibly well-run organization that's doing all the right things, just happens to have come up against Kansas City over and over again while the Chiefs are having one of the all-time runs.
3 playoff losses with 3 touchdowns and 0 turnovers. That's almost hard to do.
It is.
Like when your quarterback has 3 touchdowns and no turnovers, it's hard to lose that game, much less to lose it 3 times in the playoffs against the same opponent. If not now, then when?